music, but for some reason YouTube won't open up right now. It keeps crashing. So sad day for YouTube, sad day for 107. But that's okay. We can do literally everything else without using YouTube. So yeah, if we could all kind of just like focus. Focus. Yeah, we'll get going. So is everybody doing all right today? Oh, yeah. That is you've got enthusiasm. That's good. Any questions before I kind of jump into stuff? So if we look at where we're at with our demos, we are here in week 5. Today, I'm going to talk through 2 methods for making an animated GIF. And then on Wednesday, we're going to talk about different ways that you can sort of, relate the idea of making a GIF to all of this, pop culture and kind of everyday culture vis-a-vis our mobile devices. And we're going to just talk about the ways that we use GIF in culture. And art. We're going to talk about art, too. So I guess I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about the GIF project since we're getting started with that today. Obviously, we're using Photoshop to make our GIFs. We are also basically making a looping GIF, and we're just going to be talking about what some of the sort of like peculiarities are about the GIF format, some of the technical peculiarities. So one thing that you've probably noticed if you look at GIFs a lot on your phone is that they're usually pretty short and that they're usually pretty crappy, right? Like that's kind of part of what they are. So we'll talk about why that is a little bit and kind of how you can make it more or less crappy depending on what you're trying to kind of get through. Yeah, basically you have 2 sort of, potentially 3 approaches to working through a GIF. I'm going to cover 2, and then the third approach would be a hybrid of A and B. So we're going to talk about the first approach, which is how to take 2 digital images, and we're going to, actually, that's not something I'm going to be showing right now. Hang on just a second. Let me, yeah, right. So we will be doing that, sorry. So we're going to be taking 2 images or 1 image, breaking it up into 2, which is what we're doing, and then we're going to basically mess with it. So you can take a pre-existing digital image or even more than 1 pre-existing digital image and make it into, a bunch of stuff happening, right? And does this class start at noon? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, thanks. Don't want to call anybody out. Yes, where was I? The other method that we're going to talk about today and that I'm going to demonstrate is the idea of using a photo burst, or some mobile platforms call them photo bursts. Some people might, rightly so, just call them bunch of pictures. It's the same thing. Sorry, it is a day of distractions. I think I might actually shut the door a tiny bit. Excuse me? Oh, I was saying that it's very distracting out here. Sorry. So, who was that person? All right, so we're going to basically be working with a photo burst. That's also a technique that you can use with video as well, if you want to convert a video into a GIF. Although, if you want to convert a video into a GIF, probably the best way to do it is just to Google it and find various web apps that do it for free. And then we're also going to be, sort of talking about other different methods that you can use to make GIFs. So, basically, you can use multiple methods to create your GIF because Photoshop is a tool that does a lot of different things. So there's, a lot of different things that you can do. If we go ahead and open up our folder, so this is sort of the folder like before we get in there and actually make our GIFs. So I have two images that I think might work really well for me. One is I have this image of a vulture in flight. So it's a very simple image. I took it like last year around Labor Day. I was in Michigan near the lake, and you expect to see these beautiful aquatic birds or whatever, but mostly it was just vultures. So we thought that they were big and kind of dramatic, so I took some nice pictures of them in the sky. One of the reasons that I am choosing this image is because it has kind of a singular object that we can move around to make it look like it's moving. The other reason is because I have as you all know, I have a super limited amount of time to work with all this stuff, so I wanted to use an image that is going to be really, really quick to work with too. And the reason that it's really quick is because it has this beautiful kind of solid background. The other thing that I have is a photo burst, and I think we're going to do the photo burst first. So, yes?
Can we get these? Where can we get these files?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Where can we get these files if we want to work on them?
I will be uploading these along with the demo files that I have already uploaded. Yeah, so they'll appear basically right below the video link. Yeah, and I've been putting those up, pretty much most of the semester. So unless there's something where there's not a lot of files, then I will almost always do that. So if I go ahead and just quick look these, my quick look is messed up right now. Basically, I'll just put these into gallery mode real quickly. And it's not like the most visually compelling thing ever, but one of the reasons why I wanted to use this is because it has a clear sense of direction. So it's either going up or down, right? And it's pretty obvious which one is which. So I'm going to be using this set of pictures. And almost every mobile phone, if you have not already used it to take a burst, mostly I shoot bursts accidentally because apparently my fingers are like really heavy. But all you have to do is just hold down the button when you're taking a picture, and it should automatically shoot a bunch of photos. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Photoshop. And I think I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm not going to do anything, actually. From here, you're like, oh, yeah, let's just go home. No, I'm not going to basically open or create a new file. I'm going to do something a little bit different that we have never done before. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go over here to Scripts. And I'm going to click this option that says Load Files into Stack. And basically what that function does, is it lets you point this towards a folder. And in this case, that's this folder. And then I can select everything that's in that folder. And then I can open it. And it sort of pre-opens it in this little thing. And basically what you're doing is you're taking each one of those still images and you're adding it into its own layer. So we're going to wind up with a Photoshop document that has about 37 layers. And so I'm just going to click OK. And this sometimes can take quite a bit of time, depending on how many frames you have and how large they are in pixels. If you have a really brand new phone and you're shooting in the most high-res format, you might want to consider choosing a low-quality mode if you're doing a lot of bursts, because they can kind of just fill up your card or your drive or whatever. So in any case, this has now populated all of those images to layers. So there's one image here that I can kind of throw away right away. That is the cover image. So I have a Google phone, and when you make bursts in Google, they choose whatever they think is your best photograph, and then they make that the cover. And so it's actually a duplicate of one of the things that are inside the bursts. So yeah, so you may be sort of asking yourself, okay, that's great. They're all on different layers, so where do I go from there? And basically the answer is that you would, from here, you need to bring up your timeline palette. And so the timeline palette is I've already brought it up. I'm going to show you how to do that if you don't have it. Just go to Window, Timeline, and it should come up. That's okay. Everybody that sort of works with this stuff has to sort of deal with the timeline at some point. So I'm not aware of a method that you can get this done in Photoshop without using the timeline. So it gives you this sort of button that says Create Video Timeline, and that's like totally not what we want to do. So if you toggle this little menu, we want to create a frame animation. So those are your two options there, video timeline or frame animation. And we are definitely opting for the frame animation in this case. And so this is going to be super anticlimactic. I basically click this button that says Create Frame Animation. Okay. Basically, that just made a kind of placeholder animation, like an empty animation. So there's nothing in our animation. We only have one frame. So we can't even play it because it doesn't have more than one frame. So now our job is basically to get the stuff from our layers palette and get each of those layers into an animation frame in Photoshop. So in order to do that, we're going to go to this little window on the side of the timeline. So there's this little menu, flyout. And we're going to select the option that says Make Frames from Layers. Cool. Now, from here, we could go ahead and play it. It's doing a thing. Yeah. So a couple of things. The looping option is set here, and right now we have it set to loop forever. That's my personal preference. You could do something different if you wanted. We also want to think a little bit about this from like a distribution perspective. So one of the things we mentioned earlier is that when we're using GIFs, probably like 90% of the time that we, as in human beings in this room, are using GIFs, we're using it in the context of a mobile phone. We all sort of, I think, experience the joy that is the uneven wireless in Madison, right? So basically, you kind of have to decide, is this, if I send or if I text my GIF to my friends, do I want them to have to wait for a couple minutes, or do I want it to go through like right away? And obviously the answer is, you want that joke to land like right away. So yeah, definitely keeping your GIFs small is a good technique. Now, if you're making, there are artists who make GIFs at very high resolutions that are meant to be shown on flat screens or, projectors, but those GIFs are sort of like not maybe like the way we would experience GIFs in the wild, right? They're like in a gallery with a computer dedicated to playing them, and they don't really have to worry about, whether it's transportable or not, because it's not really meant to do that. So we're going to sort of optimize our GIF for mobile devices. And I mean, right now, we could just go in here and sort of real loosely look and see. I'm just going to get info on this folder. So it looks like this folder full of images that we used is about 118 megabytes. That is like, that's ginormous for a GIF. That's a ton of data. Now, when we get it into Photoshop and we kind of compress it into a GIF, the GIF is a compressed format, so we're going to lose some data just by doing that. But I would say that for a really simple animation like this, where it's like, drill go up, drill go down, drill go up, drill go down, do I really need 40 frames to convey that information? Absolutely not. Like, I could get away with maybe, I don't know, less than 10, probably. So let's try that. So I'm going to basically delete some of these frames. I'm going to delete every other frame, I think, in here. And so I'm going to use the Command key to do that. So I'm basically just kind of unevenly selecting the even ones. And this is sort of a quick and dirty way of making sure that I don't have a GIF that is gigantic. And there are other multiple ways to sort of make sure that our GIF is not overly gigantic. But this is definitely one of them. So I'm going to go over here to the side and opt for delete frames. Delete the frames, yes please. And so now I have a much faster, it appears faster because it's going through the same movement in fewer frames. And it's also, oh, for God's sake. I guess we have to go. Is that, oh, okay, good. Okay. I thought it was a fire alarm. Just like somebody does not want us to get through this today. That's so funny. That was really something. Okay, so okay. Yes. Well, I'm glad it wasn't a fire alarm. So now we have a GIF that's quite a bit less, there's a lot less going on. Now, I could probably delete even more frames, just because this is so simple, we're not really leaving things out. When you have more organic looking movement, it can become a little bit more important to have more frames. Because when you have organic movement, you just notice really quickly it looks wrong if it's going like this, or doing something like that. That gap between frames is just much more obvious. For something like this, where it's a mechanical movement, we really don't need very many frames. So now I think I have it down to like 9 frames. It's a little bit, it's running a little fast, so I could certainly take each of these frames and I could potentially add a delay to the frame. So every frame in the Photoshop timeline, you can add a delay. So here, I'll try like a 0.2 and just see where that takes it. I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, that's too much. So I'm going to do like 0.1. And then you can actually go even smaller if you want to. So that looks perfect to me. 0.1 is actually kind of a default for web animation in terms of low, if you want like what's called a low frame rate. So yeah, that's looking better now. Okay, so I just extended the time of each frame a tiny bit, and I still have these frames that are kind of going drill go down, and drill sort of comes up. So we're going to take all of these frames, and I'm going to show you a little way of dealing with how to kind of loop this a little more seamlessly. So if we take all of the frames, and I do a Control-C, and then, let's see, copy frames, and a paste frames, we can paste it after the selection. You can see that it allows you to kind of paste it in the middle or vice versa. So we want after. And now I can take these frames that I just pasted, and I'm going to put them in backwards order. So by doing that, I basically created a little seamless loop right there. So also, this is kind of like bugging me just a tiny bit. There's this frame where it comes back up. I'm going to get rid of this frame. So one thing that's kind of hard to get used to about the timeline is that you can't use the delete key, and you also can't use the cut and paste. It just has to come out kind of normally. So that's super annoying. So I'm just deleting these two just to get that little tiny jog where it jogs up a tiny bit. So there's my thing. Now I've gotten this loopable, it's seamless, and this is basically 16 frames long. So it's still in a place where it's going to be pretty beefy. And the reason that it's pretty beefy is because the original frames are 3036 by 448 pixels. That's enormous. I mean, that's a really pretty high quality digital photo, right? So when you look at GIFs, are you seeing 3000 by 4000 pixel images? No, far from it. So probably the next thing that I would do to kind of get this out, and this is something that you can kind of, your mileage may vary, you can go ahead and adjust the image size now and scale it down, and it'll scale down all the layers and all the frames if you just go to image size like you would in Photoshop. Or, this is what I might think is probably a better method, you can leave it high resolution in Photoshop, but we're going to export it as a low quality GIF. So that way, if you want to go back and maybe have a higher quality version or whatever, that's all sort of like editable and saved for you. So rather than going to image size, I'm going to go ahead and just export a sort of preview. So there's a couple of different ways to make a GIF in Photoshop from timeline animation. You could potentially, the most obvious way would be to go to Save As and export a GIF. Okay. Yeah, that would be the easiest way, but that's actually far from the best way. When you do it that way, you really get no options about how to scale it's not really a good way to do it. So the best way to do it is to go to Export, Save for Web Legacy. And what you're going to see is this big sort of window come up that allows you to set all sorts of settings for this GIF. So you can see my laptop is taking its sweet time. That's an indication that our GIF is a little maybe overly high resolution. So probably the first way to deal with that is to just come in here into image size in this exporter and set it way down. So I think I advised y'all to maybe make your GIFs at like 800 pixels, which would be, it would look really nice on your phone, but it's not going to be like so high resolution that people are going to freak out and not be able to download it. So that's where I would start, and then I'm just going to fit this on the screen. Okay, so there's a thing, and right now it looks like our GIF is, you get this great little sort of readout that shows you it's 99 megabytes right now. And so what are some other ways to kind of shave some file size off of this GIF? The main way that you do that in a GIF is by reducing the number of colors. So GIF uses color compression. And basically what that means is that you reduce the amount of colors available. So this is why many times when you get GIF images, you know, via text or whatever, they look pretty icky, right? Like people's faces are just kind of like, skin tones are all like blocked up and stuff like that. You can see here, even with 256 colors, which is the most that we're going to be able to get in the GIF format, it already is starting to look a little weird. So let's go ahead and lower it more so we can get like maximum weirdness. And I can show you how that looks. So right now I'm lowering it from 256 colors to about 8. And that's looking pretty crappy. Is it okay to make a crappy looking GIF? I don't know. I mean, GIFs are crappy. That's just kind of like how they are. I think definitely if you're going for some sort of retro style, I could be convinced that it's necessary that your GIF be, you know, kind of blocky. If you want to make something that looks really nice, though, you might want to try a little bit more color. So here at 64, you can see we're getting some colors back in there. And at 256, that's pretty much the most that we are allowed to get. This setting here called dither is definitely something that you want to enable. If you disable it completely, you start to get these, I mean, it's just a different look, right? Like, so with dithering, if you look right here, y'all can see the blocky tones, right? So this is with dither set to 0, and with dither turned all the way up, it just creates kind of a stippling effect that tends to blend things a little bit more. So if you like that look, then use it. And if you don't like it, don't use it. There are different ways of determining what colors are part of this color palette. And so you might play around a tiny bit with some of these color modes, because some of them are going to sort of choose colors that are in the image already, and some of them are going to try to force the colors into like a certain palette, like the Mac OS system palette. So here, if we change this to restrictive, it makes a huge difference, basically. So I would play around with these modes, especially if you have an image that's mostly like one color. You could do really well with just kind of putting the color, in a certain mode. So, okay, basically we're done. We've shaved our GIF down to 6 megabytes, which is like extremely textable. I would say if you're looking for like a file size to sort of aim under, I would aim under 25 megabytes. That's the size of stuff that you can email. I love to email me some GIFs. I thought you had a question. Okay, yeah, so yeah, I would try to keep it under 25 megabytes, but you could do a lot more if you wanted to. I just want you all to know, if you're texting it to your friends, you want it to be nice and small. So you go ahead and save it, and I guess I'll call this something like drill small. And there we are. So one thing that I get from students like a whole lot, first thing I get is, where did my file go? And then I'm like, I don't know, like I just wasn't even looking. So I'm gonna check here and just double check that I saved it to a certain place. Wasn't super careful of me. All right, so that wound up in my documents folder. So I will just go in real quickly and grab this, put it in the folder it needs to go in. And, okay, so basically what you should be able to do is you should be able to double click it. Now, if you double click it in Mac OS, you probably will get open it up in preview where it'll show all the frames on the side. Don't panic, please don't panic. That's just how your OS opens up GIFs. And that would happen on Mac or Windows, depending on what you're trying to use to open it. The best way to open a GIF, because it's really a kind of internet format, the best way to open a GIF is to open it in your web browser. So for me, that's Google Chrome. So if I open it up in Google Chrome, it should play. If your GIF is open in Google Chrome specifically, and it does not play, ask me or the TAs for help. That means maybe something went wrong. But if your GIF is playable, it will, I can 100% guarantee you that it will play in Google Chrome. Okay? So there's our beautiful GIF. Okay, so let's look at something else that we could potentially do to make a GIF. Let's go ahead and I'm going to open up a fresh JPEG here. I'll open this up in Photoshop. Wonderful. Now, my goal here is to basically make this vulture sort of fly across the sky. And we might add some special effects or other stuff if time allows. So, okay, so we're not opening we're not, in this case, opening a stack. We're going to make our entire GIF from this one single photo. So first thing probably that I should think about doing is extracting the vulture from the background. So that's a really common operation that we've done a couple of times. I'm going to just do it the easy way and say select subject. There we go. And I'm going to cut and paste it into a new layer. Okay? So that's fantastic. Now we have this sort of Vulture Sprite. But check out what's happened. Like, if I have this Vulture Sprite, and it's a sprite is just a fancy word for an animated object. If I have this Vulture Sprite kind of flying up and down here, what might the current problem be? Old Vulture is still stuck back there, right? So we definitely need to take care of old Vulture and just get it gone. Probably the easiest way to do that is to use the patch tool. You could also use the content-aware move tool, but I'll use the patch tool just because I love the patch tool, and it does everything so beautifully. Oh, man, sorry, y'all. I'm not having the greatest time with my carpal tunnel right now, so drawing with the mouse is so hard. So I'm just trying to kind of loosely get this around the thing, and we could go, first of all, we have to get back down on the background layer. That's one of my most common Photoshop sort of things. I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way. And I hit the edge there, so that's not so great. I'll go ahead and just move it over here. And that's much better. So that, I just took care of my whole problem there. Another way to deal with that is to probably, I would consider making that selection with a lasso tool and use what's called the content-aware fill. And it'll be able to blend everything out like that. So, all right, so now I'm going to use my move tool an awful lot here. And I want to be on layer 1. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer. And I'm going to duplicate it, let's say, 6 times. Once more, with feeling. Okay, so can these sort of stay numbered? Sure, I guess. They're numbered in order, which is helpful, but certainly if you were doing a lot of this type of work, I could see the benefit of renaming these. I had a student, I don't know if you all have seen it on the GIF gallery site, on the Canvas site. It was that GIF that had the ladders. Has anyone seen that one? that one had, I am not kidding you, like about 100 layers. Probably about 100 frames. So that is obviously like way beyond what's required for the project, but still admirable. So in this case, I'm just going to take these and I'm going to sort of move them into place. I think I'm also going to sort of start rotating. Whoops, not that. I'm going to start rotating them a little bit. So I'll probably rotate this one in the back too. And so we're on this one. So it takes a minute to get it set up, of course. And let's see. Go ahead and move this one over here. And I'm just going to rotate it a little bit so it looks like it's kind of arcing over. As I'm looking at this, I'm noticing that these are all looking a bit low, so I think I'm going to select all of them when I'm done and just kind of bring them to the top of the canvas a little bit. So that's a thing you can do with layers. So if I basically shift select the layers, I can, just move them all at once. I may need a couple more layers to kind of get a feeling of it entering and exiting. So I think I'm probably going to go ahead and add those now. So I'll duplicate the layer here and just have it be sort of like partially off the screen here. And then I think I'll take this one and make maybe one or two sort of out layers. I think I only need one. Okay. So one thing that is a really common, obviously I'm in a position right now where I can see everything because I have a lot of visibility. If you go ahead and select all the layers, you can lower the opacity of the layers as well. And that can just be another way to kind of like help you see what's happening. It's an animation technique called onion skinning. So you'll see it a lot in apps if you ever happen to get into animation. But for now, we don't really, we're not benefiting a lot from that, but I just wanted to show you that that's a thing you can do. Anybody have any questions before we move into the next kind of phase here? The next phase. Okay. Well, so basically what we're going to do is you may notice that now we have a stack of layers. So from this point, we can proceed pretty much in the same way that we just did, which is to create a frame animation. And don't panic. It's just that first frame. Now we can say make frames from layers. Now there's a couple of things that we're going to have to do here because you can see right away, okay, well that's sort of what I want, but not 100%, right? It looks like it didn't populate the background to all the layers. Okay, well that's easy enough. So here's layer 1, which I believe we don't need because layer 1 is just a recapitulation of the background, unless we want one frame with just the background. Might be okay. And then here, I'm seeing this layer, layer 1, and you can see that layer, watch what happens when I press the frames. It's affecting the visibility of the layers. Can everyone see that over on the right, on the layers palette? Right. So basically what we want to do here is, for frame 2, we also want the background to be visible. And for this frame, we also want the background to be visible, etc. Want the background to be visible. And I'm just going to do that for all of the frames. Background is visible. Background is visible. And let's give it another look. It's looking pretty respectable. How could we mess this up and make it like totally insane? I don't know. Let's try. So one super fun thing you can do is to sort of iteratively use filters or iteratively use color. So what do I mean by iteratively? I mean like a little bit every time, right? So if we wanted to, let's say, take this layer, I'm going to go back to my first frame here. We could certainly consider like just drawing with a brush even on this frame. Of course, then it would only happen to that frame. We could also probably add a layer on top of this layer, which is I think what I'm going to do. So I'm going to add a new layer. And I'm going to, on this layer, I think, let's see, kind of deciding what I want to do here. So I think probably it might be fun to, let's take a brush, like a really big brush. I'm going to make it a soft brush. And I kind of want to do the entire layer, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So basically to add, what I would like to do is I'd like to add an adjustment layer. And so this layer I'm going to keep down in the background just in case I need it later, but I don't think I'm going to use it for now. Also, I'm going to unlock my background layer just so I can have a little more flexibility in how I move things around. And I'm going to go ahead and make an adjustment layer, a solid color adjustment layer. So I'm going to start by making the solid color adjustment layer. Let's go from maybe blue . I was looking for blue, as a matter of fact. Okay, so now, wow, that is super blue, huh? And you can see now, basically, it's just sort of tinting everything, right? Now, it happens to be under the birds, so it's not tinting the birds. It's really just tinting the background. But we really, I think for this, in order for this to sort of work, what I want to do is I want to make it way less opaque. And I'm going to go ahead and let that live here. Now, pretty much, okay. So it looks like right now my layer kind of assignments, they get messed up as you go, and that's just sort of something that happens. So here, I'm going to say frame 1 is this, frame 2, it's pretty much the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer, and now I'm going to integrate this layer into basically every other frame. So it's going to wind up on top of every frame. Now, I'm going to sort of gradually change the color from blue to, let's say, maybe purple. And so that's basically what I'm doing right now. Changes like these take a little bit of time, and the animation process, especially in Photoshop, is pretty tedious. So I would think carefully about how you're considering how you want to animate stuff. One thing I will say, I think it's common for people to think like, oh, I need like 100 frames or I need 50 frames. And I think some of the most effective, most excellent GIFs that I've ever seen are like 3 frames or less. They're just really thoughtfully designed frames, So make those 3 frames count, and you'll be in a little bit of a happier space. So it's going to take me a second to kind of like work through these color adjustments. And then I'm going to have to sort of reassign that might not be purple enough. If you want to really do it right, you can just use like a numerical value. So in this case, maybe like make it 20 points more blue every time, or 20 points less blue. Okay, so now I have to come in here and kind of turn these layers off for the other frames. So that's frame 0, frame 2, yes, frame 3. There we go. So this one does not look quite right. There we go. And then this one does not need this. So yeah, this is sort of the tedious part, and it just is, I think, inherently tedious. So I pretty much have gotten to the end of my thing. But here you can see it's just like in a few frames, basically a color shift, right? So you do that just by kind of moving it, moving that bar slowly. Some other things that you can kind of do in a somewhat similar way is you can selectively apply filters. So we could potentially like say, oh, let's blur it out a little bit, and then let's blur it out a little bit more, blur it a little bit more. Those are all things that you can do, as a sort of part of an animation, in addition to just changing the position of things. So, any questions? We've got 3 minutes. All right, this was the most distracted class, but we'll come back with renewed purpose. It'll be a new day on Wednesday, and on Wednesday I'll be talking to you about GIFs, which is probably my favorite day in the whole semester. So I'll see you all on Wednesday. Bye.